with me. And some of the stuff that the sister was reading, understand that God took me through a journey, and he had a purpose. And I want you to understand also, because I'm like Jeremiah, I cry. And it's not because I feel sorry for myself, because I have victory. As the sister was singing, victory is mine. Victory today is mine. I know that. God has brought me through it all. But there's a purpose in what he did. And when I got to the probation department's development unit, I was a trainer for the department for 8 years. So that's why I said I trained hundreds of probation officers. Out of all the probation officers, over 900 probation officers, I had trained every one of them. We did a big seminar in Police Plaza. But what happened is I was doing training, and my department decided they were going to do domestic violence, and they asked me to spearhead this development of this curriculum. And I said, oh, Lord, how could I do this? You know, I had recently gone through all of the battles with my husband and in the courts and everything, but the Lord used that development to speed up my healing. And so I began to develop this curriculum for them, domestic violence, child abuse, and sexual abuse, with a team of people. And the Lord just used that to just speed up, speed up. He says, you gotta face it, you gotta go through it. And that's what happened. So when I finished that training, I went into, launched out into doing the development, curriculum development. We started training the probation officer on how to handle domestic violence probationers, those that were put on probation for domestic violence, and how to respond to victims. And when I did the training like a professional. And towards the end of the time that I was there in the development and training department, the Lord said, you haven't quite got it yet. And he said, you haven't put yourself into this at all. Oh, and I said, I got to share with these probation officers my personal stories. And so I began to share my personal story during the time of doing the training. And the difference in the training was just magnified, because now people connected to what I had personally gone through. It wasn't just on the books, it wasn't just a curriculum. And let me tell you, every single training that we did, women came forward to confess that they too, and this is not church, this was in the Department of Probation. Probation officers themselves were saying they went through this. We had one woman who said that her sister was killed by the husband, her offender. And another one said she was pregnant and was being abused. I mean, and what can you do with these things? So, you know, we began to talk to the women afterwards and began to connect them with services. Now, what happened was, fast forward, and I'm starting from the end to go back to the beginning, but fast forward is that when I joined the United Chaplain State of New York as a volunteer chaplain, the president of the chaplaincy, Pastor Torres, came over to me and said, I want you to listen carefully because I want you to come and start training and do chaplains training. And what I didn't share with him, that the Lord had already told me I was going to do that. So that was a confirmation. But I approached Pastor Torres, and I said, we need to do a training for the chaplains on domestic violence. They did not have a curriculum. And I said, I have a curriculum. Isn't the Lord wonderful? Isn't he awesome? He takes you from step to step to step. And so what happened was I began to redesign the training that was done for the Department of Probation and make it ministry comparable. and began to insert scripture as the Lord gave me on each piece of it, and began to do the training at the United Chaplains. And also I was already starting to do training in some of the churches. So as I share, again, part of the training is you got to share your testimony, you got to share your story. And that's how people connect, and they know that it's real, that this is not just speaking. But I look back, and again, it's almost like it was another person that this happened to, because the Lord has given me such victory, and He's just used me and made me stronger. But I was a victim of not only domestic violence, but of child abuse. My mother was not well. She was, I think, emotionally unstable, and she was also very, very abusive. And she was abusive to myself and my siblings. And so I already had a background in that. And like I said, the Lord has a purpose in everything that goes on in your life. And so from that early experience, it just set the stage for when I met my husband. And I was already a Christian and in church when I met my husband, and he decided to start coming to church, and he began to woo me. And did I know what was going on? I had no clue. First of all, I didn't know anything about alcoholism, and he was an alcoholic. I didn't know anything about drug addiction, although I'd seen some of the drug addicts in the street, but I didn't know that you could hide it. I used to see the drug addicts in the street falling down, and I thought that was drug addiction. So I didn't have a clue as to what was going on. When I married my husband, about 3 weeks into the marriage, he already, he started his abusive behavior right from the honeymoon. I have to say that. He started right from the honeymoon. But it was August that I married him, and later on, in January, I remember that I always used to go to watch night service in church, and I said, don't forget, we have watch night service. And he didn't show up at midnight. He showed up 5 minutes before midnight. And I'm sitting there and I'm saying, I gotta leave because I gotta be in church. I have to wait for the Lord. This is where we go. And so he said, you're not going to church. He came in drunk. He said, you're not going to church. You're my wife. So in other words, he was competing with the Lord for my attention. And that's not what the Lord wants. But he wouldn't let me go. I tried to walk out and go. And he said no. He wrestled me to the ground right in front of my family. Wrestled me to the ground, and he just yelled, you're not going. Well, the situation continued. Many different situations. He choked me. He did all kinds of things. A lot of the abuse wasn't even physical sometimes. Sometimes it was emotional or psychological. So don't ever say to somebody, oh no, you don't have any wounds or anything, because the wound is in the heart. Especially when you're betrayed, you feel it. You really, really feel it when you're betrayed. And that's what the scripture says here. And I just love the Lord, how he has a scripture for every situation. He understood before, before